you'll know where to go for all of the various resources we'll be sharing throughout. So what we're going to do with this 45 minutes, well, we're going to introduce ourselves to you again, just in case you've forgotten who we are, and talk about the aim for this CPD. Then we're going to move on to look at the 3 steps themselves in detail and explain the rationale behind them and what we will think they will help you to do over the next couple of weeks. We'll then talk about the resources that we've created to help you to complete each one of these steps, because we know that there's going to be a lot of competing priorities that are demanding your attention right now, and so we want to provide you with as much support as possible. And then we want to end with a bit of a plan and any questions you might have about that have come up throughout, or you would like a bit of further support with. What we tend to do with our training is we'll let you know at the start that either myself or Greg, or both of us in some cases, will hang around at the end in this Zoom for another 10 minutes or so. If you want to have an informal discussion about anything going on with the programme, just stick around at the end and we'll have a chat to you. So, very quickly then, if you want a very quick reminder of who we are, which may be useful, we're a sort of teacher-led charity founded in 2016 by Greg and our colleague Asher. Our mission is to help every child lead change through Pupil Voice and democracy. And we do this principally through our whole school programme of Pupil Voice that you will know all about as members, called the Smart School Council. It works in about 300 schools across the world, but predominantly in the UK, and we work with lots of different types of education institutions, primary, secondaries, SENs, PRUs and international schools are in there too. We exist for this reason, which is we want to see young people leading change and using their voice through school councils and democracy. That's what we are all about. That's what schools have a duty and an obligation to do. However, and I'm sure you'll remember this, we think that the way that schools go about trying to do this could be a bit better and could be improved. Why do we think that? Well, lots of teachers tell us that they find some issues with the traditional way of running their school councils that we've talked about before, and you maybe recognise, and hopefully are ones that you're not experiencing anymore. The same things coming up every year, running out of steam by Christmas, being too paper-based, depending upon having a really great teacher to ensure that it's a success, and only involving the usual suspects. And the last one for us is the most important one, for sure. And then, of course, in the year that we're having this year, there are also the issues around social distancing policies and having a whole school thought or collective experience when you're restrained in that way. It's not us, of course, not just us, rather, who thinks this. There's lots of research that says that pupil voice should be improved across the UK. The Children's Commissioner is one. Only 2 in 5 pupils think the school council listens to them. And the University of Roehampton speak very interestingly, I think, about privilege in democracies in schools and how it's significantly more likely, or young persons are significantly more likely to get involved in school councils and their elections if they come from a more enriching, I suppose might be the word, background. And that's something that we think is problematic and something that should be addressed. So again, finish our reminder of who we are and what we're all about and why you're on this programme. A Smart School Council involves every single pupil in meaningful activities of democracy and student voice and pupil and social action. Everybody's on the school council, and that's what we're seeking to do with you, however long you've been a member with us. So that then leads us to the aims. Oh, let me let somebody else into the room. There we go. Welcome, Debbie. We'll just let you get sorted out. So the aim specifically, which is a good point to join actually, Debbie, for this CPD, is to think about this window of opportunity we've got from this week, with the majority of students returning to in-school learning, to where we are before the Easter holiday break. What can we use these weeks for to set ourselves up for the rest of the year and do something really positively to support young people in their return? So that's what we're trying to do. What we think this time should be used for are 2 things. That we use our Smart School Councils to support young people's well-being, specifically as they return in what could be otherwise be a tricky period. And we also want to make sure that we're giving pupil voice a prominent place in that return that will then help us for the rest of this academic year in laying those foundations again. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do this by looking at 3 different actions that you can all take. And the thing that we want to get across very clearly and to be a part of this training process is that we support you to achieve these 3 steps by providing you with lots of helpful resources. Hopefully that's clear. Oh, let me just let one more person into the room. There we go. And just give me 2 seconds while I open this door because the dog's going a bit nuts. Excuse me. There you go. Sorry about that. This household has returned back to school today, and the dog's been in this room with me, and she needs to be let out. So there we go. Sorry about that. Right. So let's go into our three steps. If we don't have any questions, which I don't think we do. Hi, Stephen. Could you just pop yourself on mute for us, please, so that we've got a bit of feedback coming through. Thank you very much. Okay. So if that's what we're going to be setting out to do, and how do we achieve it? Well, we've identified 3 steps, or actions, if you want to call them that will help us to achieve this aim. We're going to go through each one of these, and along the way, I'm going to share with you tips and resources that will help you to achieve them. Now, I'll say at this point, it may be the case, and this is absolutely fine, that in your school, in your setting, with the capacity that you have, you might not want to do all 3 of these things. You might choose to only concentrate on one of them. And if that is the case, that's absolutely fine. We'll tell you which one we think that should be, and we'll support you to do that as well. But let's take each one of these in turn and see how they support us and challenge us over the next couple of weeks. Firstly, we think that you should meet and set targets with your communication team, your student leaders. Secondly, we think you should plan your class meetings. And then thirdly, we think that you should review the class meetings that have happened over the course of these weeks before the Easter holidays to identify 2 ideas that have come from your students that might make great action teams that you'll launch in the summer term. It may be that you have, so coming into this CPD, your own idea of what you want to use these weeks to achieve with your Smart School Council. And if that is the case, we'd love to hear from that as well, from you as well. So if you've got anything that is your particular aim that you came into this thinking about, do let us know in the chat box. Send a quick message to Greg, and then we can return to that at the end to hear more about it, and also share that practice with the rest of the teachers on the program, because it'll be really interesting for them to hear as well. But this is how we framed the training this afternoon. So step 1, let me let somebody else in, there we go. Step 1 is to meet and set targets with your communications team. Now, there might be some practicalities we need to work out with that, and I'll come to that in a moment, but let me share with you why we think this is important. Why do we think that your approach across the next couple of weeks should be set by your communications team or informed by your communications team? Well, because they are the ones who have direct experience of learning from home and have the insight that's going to help you and your colleagues in school to use your Smart School Council to support other young people who've had those same experiences. Why do we think this is important? Well, we think it's important because student voices works best where it's directed by the students themselves. That's the whole point of the communications team and why they exist. And then the other reason we think that this is an important step, and if you're going to do all 3, this is the one that you should start with, is that it gives an opportunity to ensure that your comms team are raring and ready to go, and that makes your life easier. Remember that the way that this program and this intervention is set up is that to ensure that the communications team run the program for you as much as they possibly can to make your life easier. And so if that's the approach we take with the program as a whole, this is the approach we also take when it comes to what we're going to do for these few weeks. Somebody's having difficulty joining us, so let me just let them in again. There we go. Hopefully that makes sense. So how do we do this then? Right, okay, well, there are a number of things we need to do. The practical sense is that you don't have to do this in person if you can't. And I know this is going to be the case because I've had some conversations with teachers around us who say that their comms team are made up of different social bubbles to theirs, or different year group bubbles, or whatever they might be. And if that's the case, that's difficult, but there's a way around that, which is to meet virtually, which, let's be fair, everybody's very good at by this point in the academic year. How else do we do this? Well, we want to make sure that they are aware of their roles and their responsibilities, and that they know what they need to do as they return to school. It is probably fair to say that they may have forgotten if they haven't had much of an opportunity across this academic year to really get to grips with their role. And that's fine. And the other thing that we're going to do in terms of how is we're going to give them an opportunity to shape the strategy and way in how to best to support their peers. Now, when it comes to the first of those things, you can see there on the slides, when it comes to refreshing their roles and responsibilities, and we have got a CPD that we ran at the earlier point of the academic year that talks all about what the 5 core roles should be on every communications team and why they're really important. Greg, if it's okay, could you share the first 2 links in the document that you have? One of them is the slides that you can access from that CPD, so you can go and find out more about what those 5 core roles are. And the other is a video to the CPD itself, so you can go back and watch it and take any learning from that. That is, I think it's about sort of 25 minutes long. So if you just you haven't got that time and you just want to look at the slides, I'd suggest you do that. Okay, cool. So what help can we give you today? So if we want to meet with our communications team, we know why that's important. We want them to be informing the strategy that we take. They've got lived experience that we can learn from and will help support other students. And also it makes our lives easier if they know what they're doing and they're doing it well. What help can you get from us? So what we'll do is we're going to share some class meeting question ideas with you. There should be a link that Greg's posting for that now as well. And I'll talk more about each one of those in a second. We're going to share with you a structure that you can use during your first meeting. And like I've said already, we can help you to re-establish the roles for your communications team within those CPDs. So let's take the first one of those. Greg should have shared this link with you already. It is a link to a document that is just a selection of class meeting question ideas that you can sit down and share with your communications team and select the ones that they may think might work best for your students. A lot of these we've given lots of thoughts to them, and they are around doing 2 things, I suppose. Supporting young people's well-being, so questions about feeling safe in school, about the environment in school and how they might like to change it as they go through this period. And secondly, it's about trying to learn from what's happened at home over the course of the majority of this term. So what aspects of home learning have you enjoyed, and what experiences can we take back into the school to maybe adapt the way we approach learning in school? Questions like those, there are a lot of them, and not all of them will be applicable to you in your school, and that's absolutely fine. But it's a really good resource to use to get that discussion going with maybe not just yourself, but also with your students, for selecting great ideas for your class meetings. And then there's the structure of the meeting itself. And there's a resource for this as well. The idea is to go and ask these questions of your comms team, whether you're meeting them in person or whether you're meeting them virtually. How many class meetings should we run before the Easter holiday? What have you got capacity to do? What do we think is achievable? Do you have any ideas for class meeting questions? So do they have any organic ideas that would make for questions that would make great class meetings? Start with that. If they don't have any organic ideas, use our example questions, share them with your young people and get them discussing and debating which ones they like and which ones they think would be really great in your school. And then thirdly, it's about checking that they're prepared. So, okay, if we've decided that these 2 things are going to be our class meeting questions over the next couple of weeks, then what do we need to do to get this up and running? Do we remember our roles? Do we have access to all of the right equipment that we need? And questions like those. You'll find all of that in the resource as well. If, by the way, you're not really into looking at multiple screens at the same time, what I should have said at the start, so I'll say now, is at the end of this CPD, I will send you an email with all of the links that I've discussed in this through Eventbrite. So they're all in one place for you to access. You don't need to worry about sort of saving them or panicking around them right now. Now, before we move on to the second option, I imagine this is a question that will come up in lots of people's minds, and that's completely understandable, and it's this. What if I can't meet with my communications team over the next week or so, but I still want to get my Smart School Council up and running? What do I do? And I think the answer to that, firstly, the question is a completely understandable one in a position we recognize lots of our teachers are in. And secondly, the answer is it's okay. If you can't start this process by meeting with your comms team and you just want to concentrate for yourself on getting your students, the students across the school as a whole involved with class meetings, that's absolutely fine. I would encourage you when after the Easter holidays to consider having that first meeting with the communications team then, and it would probably look very similar to the structure we're suggesting for you today. But if you have to decide on where your priorities lie right now, and it's not with meeting with the communications team, that's okay, don't worry. Our second step, what does that look like? Right, well, it is all about us planning what we're going to do with our class meetings across the course of the next couple of weeks. And we've got, so it's 4 weeks before the Easter holiday if you're in England, including this week, the one we're currently in. So why do we want to plan our class meetings? What advantages do we gain? And we think they are the following. The short period before Easter, I guess, offers us an opportunity to plan ahead and embed our practice. It offers us an opportunity to get to re-establish, I guess, some buy-in from staff by sharing a plan, not just for how the year is going to work, but the course of the next couple of weeks, and how your Smart School Council can be used to support young people's well-being in school. And that could include the questions you've been asking, the timings that you want them to be aware of, and any expectations you have for them completing it. And then thirdly, planning what class meetings we're going to do will mean that your commitment to pupil voice is a lot more manageable. We know, and I think we're very conscious of this, Greg, aren't we, generally, that for you as our lead teachers in schools, one of the most time-consuming things you can do when you're trying to embed the Smart School Council model is think of good questions. Now, we try to support you with this in a number of ways. Our symphony questions, our suggested questions are one of those, and they'll be starting again on Monday. But I guess that's a great resource, but we want to use this CPD to do a particular response to that with the questions we've already discussed, and you've got that document to take away with you. That will mean that hopefully by the end of today or tomorrow, if you have a bit of time to think about the CPD, you will have already selected what questions you are going to be asking from now until Easter, and it's all clear in your mind, so you just have to go and set them up every week then, rather than spend all of that time trying to prepare and think about what would be a good one. So how do we do this then? So, okay, when we know how many class meetings you're going to do, it's about matching the question ideas to answer options into a plan, I suppose. So in thinking to yourselves, and I'll share a resource that will help you with this in a little while. Okay, so we're not going to do this one this week because it's already Wednesday, but on next week, we're going to have our first class meeting. It's going to go out on Monday. It's going to be this question and the answer options are going to be this. And then, then you've done the majority of the work. Following that, then you might want to decide on a brief timeline for then the other class meetings that might follow for the rest of this remainder of this term. I think the most important part of step 2 with planning the class meetings is sharing a plan with your colleagues, and I'll share a resource that will help you to do this in a little while. I think getting or re-establishing that connection between your Smart School Councils and your colleagues, why it's important, and getting their buy-in is really important, particularly at a stage when there's lots of other things that are going on, and there's lots of dialogue in school, I'm sure, about what we're doing to support students. So there's an opportunity to do that here as well. So what help have we got for you to do this? And we'll share that with you now. We've written an email template for you to edit with your school-specific information to send out to your staff. We've also written a template timeline to help you frame your thoughts on the weeks ahead and how you should approach it. There's a question here again about capacity. I'll return to that after I've talked about the resources. So this is the first one. It's an example timeline. It's a very simple resource. It's something you can edit if you want to. Greg, if you wouldn't mind sharing a link to that in the chat box at this point again, that would be brilliant. I'm not going to talk through it in a huge amount of detail, but you can see an example of what it looks like here. So it might be that if you're going to do all 3 of our steps in week 1 of the plan, you're going to be on your timeline rather, you're going to be meeting with the comms team, you're going to discuss the things we've talked about already, get your plan in place. Great. Week 2 is going to be holding a meeting. What's your question going to be? What are your options? How long is it going to be available for your school to participate in? And then it follows in then for the same pattern up until the week 4, which would then be, if you were starting this week, the Easter holidays themselves. I think it's useful to consider it in this way, so that I guess you kind of get all of the thoughts, like I was alluding to earlier, out of the way with, so that it leaves the rest of these weeks ahead just to go and do the things that you've already planned. And then there's the email template. You send emails to your colleagues all the time, right? But we thought it would be useful just to give you a sense of what this might look like. And here there is also a link that Greg will be sharing that gives to a Google Doc with just a text inside that you can edit. I feel really strongly this is a useful thing to do, but feel free to amend and adjust this as you would regularly to your colleagues. So the idea of this email is to say, okay, great. Now that we're back, here's what Pupil Voice is going to look like over the next 3 weeks. We're going to be doing X number of class meetings. Might be 3, might be 2, might be 1, whatever. And this is what the schedule is going to look like. You're going to let them know which weeks, which questions are happening on, and then how you're going to share that information with them. So I'll send the links to you on every Monday, and you've got till Friday to complete them. Fantastic. I think it's good to do this. I think it's good to remind everyone of what the expectations are for getting involved in pupil voice in your school, and also making sure it's really clear so that you get as big an uptake in this as possible. So let me answer the question now about capacity. And I can hear it coming again, and it's a very reasonable objection. Sam, I haven't got time to do all of those things. Okay, fine. If you don't, these are the most important things you can do over the next 2 weeks. If you can only run one class meeting, or if you can only run 2 class meetings, we would encourage you to think about asking these specific questions. First question is, what's the best thing about being back in school? And the second question is, which of these aspects of home learning would you like to see more of in school? Why are we suggesting those 2 questions? Well, for the following reasons. Firstly, the first question is all about getting young people excited to be back in school again and sharing what they love about it. And it's a positive experience that supports well-being through a difficult time. The second question is an opportunity for us as educators to learn about the aspects of home learning that young people have become very accustomed to over the recent years, that maybe enhances their life or something that they prefer to do. And it will be good for us to learn from that. And so it's an opportunity to decide the options that accompany that question. Might be self-directed learning time, it might be more regular breaks. The options are endless, I think, when it comes to matching those to the question. But I think that if you are worried about capacity and you can't do everything, we're suggesting that 1 or 2 class meetings on questions that are like these, you can't go wrong with that, and your pupils will benefit in a really significant way from it. Okay, we're rattling through this really well, but let's get on to our third step. Our third step is to identify 2 ideas that would make great action teams in summer term. So let me explain a bit more about the rationale for this step again, and then we'll go through the same process we have with the others. So the way that we've experienced 2020-2021 academic year has meant that for the majority of our schools in the program, they've struggled to get action teams up and running. And that's principally because of social distancing policies and the restrictions that they provide. The best opportunity that we're going to have for those to no longer be the case are going to be in summer term. Now, we can't guarantee that necessarily, but that's going to be our best opportunity. And so we should consider how we might want to approach it. And if the social distancing restrictions we have don't that's okay, because we can consider what we can do with action teams to make them run even in those environments. Why else? Well, because we think young people get involved in social action or sharing a passion is an incredibly important part of the program and should be prioritized. And thirdly, we think that approaching action teams in a structured way makes them more likely to succeed and easier to manage. So let's talk about the how then. How does this work? So we think that in the final week for Easter, maybe at the end of that final week before we break up for the holidays, it would be a fantastic thing to do to meet with your communications team, if you can physically, if you can virtually, if not, just for you yourself, to review all of the ideas that have come in through the class meetings that you're going to plan for the next couple of weeks. And the purpose of reviewing these ideas is to look for specifically between 2 and 5, more if you want to, that's up to you, excellent ideas that can become action teams in the summer term. And the ideas here can come from 2 places. They can come from the responses that your young people have given to the questions you've asked specifically through the class meetings. So it might be, for example, if you ask the question that we mentioned earlier on about home learning and what elements of it young people have enjoyed the most, and there's a very clear winner that's come through from that is to do with, I don't know, self-directed learning, then an action that might come from that is to suggest how you look at embedding that in the school practice and changing the way that you work. There is a very clear idea for what an action team could be doing. Or the other place that these ideas could come from are from the latter part of the class meetings, where you have that general question about school improvements. And there will be a litany of ideas that come through those that could also be ones that could become action teams. There's a process, I think, for identifying them, and we'll talk about that in a second or two. But that's, I think, the approach that we should be taking. Then the third then is about what we do with those then. So the third thing is about how we then decide what we should do to turn those ideas into actions when we get back from back for the summer term, so that we can hit the ground running. So what help can we provide you with this? Well, two things. We're going to suggest some questions that you can ask of yourself, or you can ask of your communications team when you are reviewing the data and seeking specifically to find these fantastic ideas. We can also share examples of great action teams from other schools and how they've worked. So this is the major thing that we want to share, which is what questions should we ask about an idea that would give us an indication that it could be a successful action team in the summer term. So this is the first question. Is the idea achievable? Is it something that we think has legs? It's okay to ask that question because we're only looking for a specific number here, between 2 and 5, to start off as an initial exploration of your action teams. Later on in the term, you should have an opportunity to bring in even more ideas, even if you think they're not achievable, because there's definitely an aim in that. Secondly, then, is it a popular idea? So one of the ways in which I think it's good practice to suggest an idea becomes an action team is if it comes up really frequently. If there are 2 or 3 or 4 iterations of the question of a similar theme or a similar variation that have come across organically in different places, that gives us a sense that this might be something that students want to see in the work. We need to know that there's a clear connection between the person that suggested the idea and the idea itself, because they are the ones that your comms team, or maybe you, however you're going to run it, are going to approach to support them to set up their action team and get it running. And then fourthly, we then consider about what they need to get started. Do they have an adult sponsor in school? Do they have a place to meet? What resources do they need? And I guess as the communications team, your response is to ensure that they get access to all of those things to be successful. So those are the questions that I would be asking. If I was sat with my communications team and we were looking at all of these answers, these are the questions I'd be asking. And the answers to these questions, I think, would be the ones that would help us to discover a couple, however many you want to do. I would recommend 2 or 3 ideas that we're going to give over to the action teams in the summer term, get them running and see how they get on. So hopefully what I've done at this point, by this point rather, is to share with you our 3 steps for actions that you could take to meet the aims that we started with. And those aims were, if we want to remind ourselves, to support young people's well-being through their Smart School Council as they return to school and they go through that transition. And then secondly, to ensure that we're laying the foundations for a really successful summer term in all parts of the program. So that's the class meetings, a really great self-managing, functioning communications team, and opportunities for action teams to get up and running and for students to get involved in those. So again, we're at this position now where you might be thinking of what this looks like for you, what you're going to take away from the CPD and what you're going to go and action in school. We've shared lots of links with you. We've shared lots of resources for you. They're all there for you at your beck and call to use however you want. But I think the point that we want to make sure that we leave you with this afternoon is that you have a clear plan for yourself. And it might be that you're not doing all 3. It might be that you're only doing 1 or 2, and that's absolutely fine. So what does it look like in practice? If I was going to put myself in your position and consider myself in a school, having listened to all of this, what would I start with? This is what I would do. So if I was going to do all 3 of these, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to meet with my communications team to set the target and the agenda with them, so we're both on the same page and we know what we're doing across the next couple of weeks. We're then going to have a very clear picture of how many class meetings we're going to do and what the questions that we're going to ask. I'm going to share that plan with my colleagues to make sure that they are on board with it and they're going to be supporting the process. Excuse me. And then by the end, at the end of this period of time, we're going to review the results and the data that's been generated from all of this fantastic and organic pupil voice experiences to help us set an agenda for the summer term, so that we know where we're going next, specifically in the area of action teams and how they're going to get up and running across the summer term. So I think